Today on Locked On Canadiens, Marty St. squashes your imaginary beef between him and Arber Xhekaj once and for all.
You are Locked On Canadiens, your daily podcast on the Montreal Canadiens. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into episode 1382 of Locked On Canadiens. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day and for subscribing wherever you get your podcast. Doing that ensures you don't miss an episode, and it supports us here at the show. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. My name is Ian Boisvert, also known as That May Be a Team, and I'm joined, as I always am, by Laura Saba, also known as the Active Stick. Laura, we are post golf tournament, which means like we're kind of in a dead zone. We got the obligatory Lane Hudson first on the ice today post. I did see that, and then it's kind of been quiet, right? A little too quiet.
A little bit. I'm wondering if like he and Ivan Demidov start pranking each other, so they're the first one on the ice going forward. I it's quiet, but it's still, the season has started. Like, this is as far, we talked about the golf tournament yesterday. Like, all the quotes from the players that are from here, they're like, we know that this is the start of the season, right? Like, this kicks off the season. So as far as I'm concerned, the Habs are back. They've been skating for like 6 weeks or whatever it was already. Like, they've been practicing together. They're back. Yeah. We're getting started. And we are 4 days away from games, I believe. By the time you're listening to this, we will be
Monday.
The game on Monday night. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's an exciting time to be a Montreal Canadiens fan. And I know that there's a lot of players that have a lot to prove this season.
Yes, absolutely. So we'll cover the camp roster. Really want to focus in on who we expect the Canadiens are hoping will have a good start to their camp, who needs to get off to a good start to their camp. I want to go into Marty St. Louis talking about Arber Xhekaj at the golf tournament. There was a couple quotes that are, we can only do so much in a half hour. We want to make sure that we're covering off on that. It was very important to Marty, I think, to speak about how he, wants to use Arber Xhekaj. So that's an important point from there. And then we'll continue our division stack up, looking at the Detroit Red Wings, a team that Montreal has somehow surpassed in their rebuilds very quickly. We'll figure out where Detroit is at now and if Montreal is in danger of ceding their spot to the Red Wings next season. All right, let's start with camp rosters. So the Montreal Canadiens invited 60 players to training camp. I feel like that number is lower than it had been in like the Bergevin times, where it was like they invited 70 some odd players to camp. 60 is still a lot. You can ice almost 3 full teams with that, and I don't know that you need that.
I feel like they had a lot of people last year too, if I'm not mistaken. Like, it was an obscenely large roster last time as well. There weren't really any surprises on this roster. Not really. Nothing jumped out at me at all. All the players I expected to be there are there. There were no there was nobody that I was like, why are they inviting him or whatever.
You're a big Benjamin Gaudreau guy. That's a real guy I learned about by looking at this. He doesn't have a contract. He's a goalie. Played for Rockford in the AHL, as well as Indy of the ECHL last year. So, I mean, yes, you're not wrong. It's not like there's omissions from this list where you're going, hey, why wasn't this person invited? It's more so these are a bunch of guys that, and end of thought. There's just a bunch of guys.
Mm-hmm.
Of those bunch of guys, though, there is a core of there's guys that are going to make this team, and we don't really have to worry about it. That's not really what is interesting about talking about training camp. It's the bubble players. Of course, it's the Kirby Docs, where he's not a bubble player. He's going to play on this team, but it's like, where?
Yeah.
But there are guys who, let's face it, the difference between their AHL salaries and their NHL salaries make it so that making the NHL team is a massive financial windfall for them. It's just the way that these contracts are structured. So like, people are like, oh, he showed up not motivated. That's a pretty big motivating factor, if you ask me. The difference between, $80,000 and $800,000. Just, an example of a potential two-way contract. Is there who stands out in that list of players who need to show up ready to go?
Well, I think we'll go with one of the obvious ones, right? Like Samuel Blais, right? He's a guy that he was brought in to be a cusp player, and it's up to him which side of the which league he ends up playing, right? That to me is somebody who his spot is like almost guaranteed, but not fully guaranteed. And I think if given the choice between Blais and like a guy that they drafted and are developing, I think they go with their guy. I think the Habs will go with like an Owen Beck or whoever, a Joshua Waugh, like that kind of person.
Yeah, I see Sammy Blais as, at the grocery store when you're checking out and there's the little plastic thing that you can put in between your groceries and the groceries of the person behind you.
Yeah.
He's the grocery stick in between the American League and the National Hockey League. In that nobody ever ends up buying that. They put it back, but like doesn't really belong in either one of those.
Yeah.
He's this, in my opinion, I think Sammy Blais ends up being this year's Michael Pezzetta, except one that they're maybe more comfortable playing in a pinch. But generally speaking, I think his role is best served if he is the 13th forward, just so the Canadiens feel comfortable. We have an NHL caliber 13th forward. And so that their press box doesn't have an Owen Beck in it, a Joshua Waugh in it, right? Like they would rather have those guys playing. A Florian Xhekaj, they want him playing. They don't want him sitting in the Bell Center parking lot, press box, eating popcorn. They'd rather have him in Laval playing hockey games. With that said, there's two guys I mentioned there in Joshua Waugh and Owen Beck. Let's start with Joshua Waugh, because I think if Joshua Waugh is going to make this team, I don't know that Sammy Blais is the guy keeping him from doing it, because Joshua Waugh's not going to play a fourth line role. They would want him in a middle six sort of depth scoring role. No. So like, how important is it that he shows up ready to go and potentially, generating some offense in camp this year?
I think it's crucial for him in his future career, right? I think he did a lot last year to kind of damage his reputation. And again, we talk a lot about how he was a 5th round pick or whatever. No, this guy was a guy that was in their future plans. This kid had so much promise, right? He didn't take it seriously. He was inconsistent. He did not look dedicated. So he really needs to have a really good camp, not just to make the NHL, but to be a guy that other teams also want, right? If he's going to play in the NHL, it's not so likely that he's going to do it on the Habs, but there's still other teams that might need him and want him. He needs to prove it to himself. And we talked about how Sammy Blais is not the one keeping him from the NHL roster. Like the only person keeping Joshua Waugh from the NHL roster is Joshua Waugh.
Yeah, no, there's no, I don't think there's any other way to read that.
Yeah.
I think this guy has the talent to be there. And we can say that with some level of certainty, because last fall, a year ago right now, we thought he was going to be there. We thought he was going to be able to put together a camp where the Canadiens say, yeah, you're on the team. And then they waive Pezzetta and they're not worried about any of this. But he showed up at that camp and had a terrible camp, right? Like it's worth revisiting so that we're not, this year when he doesn't make it, we all go, how could he do this? Well, he did it last year. So I think Joshua Waugh, for me, like this is critically important for him to show up ready to go for the same reasons that you said, not only for his Canadiens future, but his NHL future, right? Like this might be a guy that Canadiens trade away to get something that helps them now, but he's able to go and be an NHLer in another city.
Like
Owen
Pittsburgh,
Beck,
for example.
Pittsburgh, for example, I think about how he played with Bedard in World Juniors. And how maybe that's an option for Chicago to get a guy that maybe Bedard is comfortable with, that's an option for Waugh down the line. So we'll see. Owen Beck, I don't think it's super. He needs to have a nice camp, but I feel that the expectations are probably just a little bit lower, because I don't think we're all like, this guy should make the National Hockey League at this point. And we joked about it when talking about the rookie camp where he made his NHL debut 2 years ago, but we're still in that point with him where like his spot is held up by a guy like Jake Evans. It's not being held up by Sammy Blais. Like it's being held up by a legitimate, fourth line center in the National Hockey League who might be
or
this
like
year's
Joe
third line
Veleno.
center. Or Joe Veleno, right? If he shows up in camp and can outduel Joe Veleno, I like his chances, right? I like his chances of making that team, because I think the Canadiens would see that as a success story. Where are you at on Owen Beck? And maybe if there's anybody else that you're thinking of, hey, this guy needs to show up ready to go.
I think, honestly, I like in training camp, it's got to be Owen Beck and Joshua Waugh. because, the likelihood of somebody like Sean Farrell making the team or Philip Machar making the team right now is so low. But I do think that like we want them to have good camps. But for me, the Owen Beck thing is that we're not at the point now where we say he needs to be a full-time NHLer, but we're getting close to that Charles Hudon point. And I don't want him to get there.
Ooh. That we need to bookmark that as a concept. The Charles Hudon, we put him at the top of like what's the bit from Price is Right where it's like the yodeler going up the hill. Like the top is the Charles Hudon point where it just everything falls off from there.
Like that to me, like like that as a concept, Charles Hudon point is a thing for me. And I know we're gonna hear about this from Scott. And again, I'm not comparing
the London line, the Charles Hudon point. Like these are all established functions of watching hockey now.
Yes, absolutely. I really want Owen Beck to make it. I think he's going to be the future fourth line center of this team. I just think that, he's like the Canadiens kind of need to give him a shot and he needs to grab it. There's just we're getting close. Like there's a risk here. That's all I'm saying.
Yep. Yeah, and look, he might be third in line to be getting a fourth line role at this point. Like it might be Xhekaj ahead of him. You might even have Tuck ahead of him at this point, depending on what you're hoping that player to do. If you're hoping that player's going to put guys into the end boards, you're probably going with Tuck and Xhekaj. So we'll see how that plays out. All right, we'll be following camp obviously once everybody's on the ice and we start to see some line combinations and we can talk about those. But for now, we have to move on. When we come back, we'll go back to the golf tournament, where Marty had some choice words about his relationship with Arber Xhekaj, and we'll get into all that in just a minute here on Locked On Canadiens. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And if you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. That, to me, I really love that. The easy visualization of data is the most important because the data is only as good as your understanding of it. So Monarch putting all of this stuff in very simple graphics to understand, it takes sort of the expertise away from you. I use it. I'm maximizing my investments, increasing my savings rate, easily reviewing my finances with my wife, keeping a clear view of what I have ahead week to week, long-term, thinking of things like retirement, always keeping this stuff in mind when I'm using Monarch Money. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNHL. All right, we're back. And we're back with an oldie but a goodie, talking about Marty St. Louis' relationship with Arber Xhekaj. I am wearing my Costco t-shirt to commemorate the squashing of this beef. And also, let's just be honest. I know a lot of people generally like, oh, he doesn't like Arber. Why would a man as small as Marty St. Louis choose to pick up a fight with a guy as big as Arber Xhekaj? Even if there's a line there that you don't cross as that's my boss, I'm not going to hit him. It's still our brains are designed by evolution to not pick fights with things that are that much bigger than us. But I guess that's how Marty St. Louis became a Hall of Famer anyway. So maybe he's just built different. So Marty St. Louis was asked about Arber at the golf tournament. He said, this is a bit of a long quote, but I want to get through it. Arber knows that I love him, although the perception can sometimes cloud things. Playing defense in the NHL is one of the most difficult positions, especially as a young player. I know his main asset is his physicality, and I don't want to remove that. But it doesn't mean that every shift you'll have an opportunity to be physical. If you're only looking for that, you can take yourself out of the play. But the next shift, you might have 3 chances. You can't always look for it. You have to let it develop. It's easier to coach a player who's more aggressive than to have to tell him to be more aggressive. But I have a great relationship with him. What are your opening thoughts on that? I think very well put quote from Marty St. Louis.
I think Marty is absolutely right. And that's the thing. I love how he alluded to the perception, right? The perception may be different. No, I think we all know that Arber Xhekaj has a gift. It is a gift. It's not just the size, it's what he does with it, right? And so I think harnessing that is so important. Being able to control your own game. We talked about it with Ivan Demirov's showcase on Saturday night, right? Like the way he controls his own game, every movement, every, all the behaviors. And Arber Xhekaj just needs to do something like that. Like I think that's, he's very effective. And we have to stop thinking of him as just the sheriff, because at the end of the day, the actual sheriffs on the ice are always like getting in his way. He's not going to be able to punch someone's face for you. That's just the way it is. So you should not be going and gratuitously looking for that, right? What he should do, and he did do quite effectively at multiple points last season, is let the moment come to him.
Yeah. I think of the line here, I don't want to remove that, but that doesn't mean every opportunity you'll be able to be physical. If you're only looking for that, you can take yourself out of the play. I wish somebody was around to tell that to Alexei Emelin. And for those who might not be of a certain age who saw Alexei Emelin play hockey, I don't know. There's a lot of new friends who are listening to the show, new fans of the team. Alexei Emelin, his first couple of seasons in the National Hockey League, he was a menace. He was a menace to deal with. I think of one game in particular, and I can't remember the year, but it was in Boston. He was a pain in the rear to the Bruins, to the point where he gets jumped by Zdeno Chara. Alexei Emelin didn't fight anybody ever because he had a metal plate in his face from a fight that he had been in the KHL. Basically, they were like, "Don't fight ever again. You could die." So he never fought. Didn't stop him from leveling some of the most disgusting hip checks of his generation. But the problem is that he kind of became a one-trick pony, and that's all he wanted to do was lay guys out. Marty St. Louis' goal against the Canadiens in the Eastern Conference Final in 2014. Why is Marty St. Louis that wide open in overtime of Game 4? It's because Alexei Emelin went out of his way to go hit somebody else. Like that's the kind of player that they're trying to avoid Arber Xhekaj becoming. Something I think they've done particularly well at. I think Marty pointing out the perception here is important because none of you have this opinion about Jayden Struble. Does Marty St. Louis hate Jayden Struble? He plays him pretty infrequently. Nobody cares. Nobody cares that he's not playing Jayden Struble. Arber Xhekaj is a folk hero at this point, right? Like that's the difference here. It's not so much that Marty hates one and likes the other. It's you like one more than the other. Like I wish it was easier for people to understand that. I think Marty loves what this guy brings just as much as we all do. It's just finding the right situation to roll him out. Like games 2 and 3 of the playoffs, when you're controlling the matchup at home, throw Arber Xhekaj out on the ice. I love
Absolutely. That. Yes, 100%. And that's the thing too, is that Arber Xhekaj, like he has so much ability. And like we talked about a Charles Hudon point, like there's an Alexei Emelin point, right?
Yeah.
And we don't want him to get there. Like he's got to this has to be part of his second nature, is not always looking for those moments.
Yeah, just knowing when to pick your spots. This is the thing with guys like Arber Xhekaj. It's not like those moments are never going to happen. Like for every Arber Xhekaj, there's 8 guys who think they can fight Arber Xhekaj. There's 8 guys who think they can take a run at somebody while Arber Xhekaj is on the ice. Those moments are going to happen. He doesn't need to chase them. I think about last preseason, something he cannot afford to recreate, but he was reactive to everything that was happening, right? It was Cedric Pare knees Patrick Laine, he jumps Cedric Pare. It was Doc getting hit up high in the Ottawa game. Well, I'm gonna go hit Tim Stützle up high, right? He was reactive to all of that, and I think that's sort of what people expect him to be. But you can, he can be physical outside of that and not instigate things, but just, hey, you're coming over the blue line, I'm going to lay you out. I think that's, we kind of understand enforcers in this sport to being like, well, you hurt our guy, so I'm going to hurt your guy. And that's, I guess, part of it, but it's never a part that I particularly liked. And it's obviously not a deterrence. It's never been a deterrence and never will be. Arber Xhekaj is an enforcer in the sense that you're hoping he is going to make people worried about coming over the blue line with their head up. They're not going to put the puck into his corner of the rink because they know they're going to get beat up when they go down there. So like that's to me what they're hoping Arber Xhekaj becomes.
Yeah, and I think he's perfectly capable of that, and we have seen it, and it's a joy to watch. It's truly a joy to watch, and I find that he's definitely going to develop more and more of a reputation if he continues in that positive regard. He's going to develop more and more of a reputation, and people aren't going to want to mess with the Canadians.
Yeah, which again is we talked about this with Owen Protz and Tyler Thorpe and Bryce Pickford. Like they want to build a roster that nobody wants to play against. It's not one guy. It's like it's never just going to be Arber Xhekaj who is the guy you don't want to mess with. It needs to be there needs to be a guy like him on the ice almost at all times. And that like look at the Florida Panthers. That is the model that people have created. Not only are they all mean jerks who are going to beat you up, they're all really good at hockey too. So like Arber has that first part down. It's Marty's job to get the rest of it out of him without muting that first part. And I think Marty to this point, and give Stefan Robidas credit as well. I think they've done a great job of that so far. And it's going to continue to develop, and hopefully, he becomes that force the Canadians really hope that he becomes.
I'm thinking of this time last year when we got accused of hating Arber Xhekaj. I guess it just happens. I guess everyone gets accused of hating Arber Xhekaj. Like if Marty, everybody just
yeah. If we're getting accused of something that Marty St. Louis is being accused of, I like our company. I think we're doing our job pretty well here as just lowly podcast hosts. All right. When we come back, we're going to get back into our division stack up. We're looking at the Detroit Red Wings, who were the next team immediately behind the Canadiens in the standings last year. Did the Red Wings do enough to supplant Montreal in this upcoming season? We'll get into all of that here on Locked On Canadiens. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Look, I love using FanDuel because I get to play however I want to play. I love player props. I love putting down anytime touchdown. I love building parlays out of anytime touchdowns. It's a lot of fun to follow along on Sundays and make sure my guys are scoring, especially building that in with my fantasy team. I'll either be twice as happy or twice as upset, but that's what Sundays are all about. It makes every game more exciting, whether I'm watching my team or keeping an eye on who's beating me in fantasy that week. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sundays. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. All right, the Red Wings. The Red Wings to me are nuclear fission. They're 5 years away from being 5 years away. It's how it's always been since Ken Holland left, which is not a great sign when a guy everyone clowns on left and you really haven't made much progress since then. When we think of the Detroit Red Wings, Laura, what comes to mind? Like what's the identity of this hockey team?
Confused.
Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Yeah. No, I honestly I feel like they didn't do enough to get better 2 years ago when that was their time. Like that was their opportunity before Ottawa, before Montreal kind of, took those steps forward. That was an opportunity for them. And I feel like they weren't aggressive enough. And I truly feel like there were some baffling decisions that were made. And again, the Canadiens are kind of the beneficiary of this. It just feels like they had a plan, and somewhere along the line, it became just the same thing over and over again. It didn't evolve. The plan did not evolve with the team and the NHL.
Yeah, I think that's true. What I find most fascinating about the Red Wings is that, like, remember when they drafted Mo Seider?
Yes.
And even Mo Seider couldn't believe the name that was called was Mo Seider. Yeah. And everyone was like, man, they botched that pick. No, they nailed that pick. Mo Seider rules. Like, there should be no reason that we're looking back at them and be like, what happened? I mean, yes, they've never won a lottery. I don't think they've picked in the top 3, maybe even the top 5. But even with that, they've drafted really, really well. I think of Lucas Raymond just had an 80-point season for them. I think, getting DeBrincat was a nice windfall for them. Dylan Larkin is always around it. Morris Seider, I think as a 23-year-old defenseman is just really, really good. I think confused is the right word to use for their identity, because I'm confused about what they ought to be. They should be better, no?
They should be better. They should be better, and they should be progressively getting better. Instead, they're treading water. I think that's the biggest thing, is that they're just treading water.
Yeah, I agree. Last year Detroit finished 5 points behind the Canadiens. They were the next closest Atlantic Division team to Montreal. And they didn't really do too much this summer. They added John Gibson in net for Anaheim, which I really like for them. I think that adds some stability to their goaltending should he stay healthy, which again is a big question mark for that player and just every player. We're all day to day. I think that ought to help. The problem is that the list really ends there. They traded away Vlad Tarasenko for future considerations. They have nearly $12 million in cap space, and they're trading away they're cap dumping a player who could help them. A player who last year was 7th on the team in scoring, 33 points, 11 goals in 80 games. Like this isn't like a fourth line player you're just dumping. That's like legitimate secondary scoring.
Yeah.
And then they go out and they sign Travis Hamonic. And this one was shocking to me because I didn't realize he was still playing. James Van Riemsdyk, of all people, signed with the Detroit Red Wings, which is very funny.
Also, like Travis Hamonic, like why is he still playing?
Yeah, Travis Hamonic is Cody Ceci with bad PR.
Yeah.
That's like, Cody Ceci's like just as bad, and I don't understand how one of them plays on like Stanley Cup finalists and the other is like looking around for $1 million contracts every once in a while. The Ottawa Senators falling over themselves to get Travis Hamonic a couple years ago. What are the Red Wings' chances over the next few years of actually being a playoff team? Like, I find that everybody in the East except for Pittsburgh is getting better. So the Red Wings staying kind of pat with what they are. I find that if I was a Red Wings fan, I'd be like, what's going on?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And this is the thing, is like, you know, because they're not evolving, they've done themselves a disservice, because people are just going to have them out of the conversation. Like nobody's talking about them anymore. People are talking about Ottawa and Montreal now, right? People are going to be talking about Philadelphia and Columbus this season.
Yeah, more people have to be talking about Columbus, man. I really like that hockey team. Like they're going to be good.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I look at Detroit and I think they've positioned themselves to next summer be a team who's going to be flush with cash and ready to spend on an open market. The problem here is twofold. Lots of people are going to have lots of money with the cap going up. You've given nobody a reason to want to play in Detroit.
Yeah.
That building is a state-of-the-art facility that has never seen a playoff game. And, I'm also wondering, can Dylan Larkin be enough to bring that team? Like there was a time when, Dylan Larkin was placed above Nick Suzuki. Like that was it was like they were close, but Larkin, edged him out. That's over. Like Dylan Larkin had a 70-point season last year and he played every game. Like that's done. Nick Suzuki's a better player than Dylan Larkin. Yeah. And I'm just wondering, have they done enough around Dylan Larkin to provide him with enough offense to be a team that can win hockey games? I'm genuinely curious. I love a lot of the things. I love Lucas Raymond. He's incredible. Alex DeBrincat's great. I like Dylan Larkin. I do. I just don't think he's enough to be like, yes, this is a playoff team around Dylan Larkin. Dylan Larkin played in the playoffs as a rookie, I believe.
Yes.
He didn't. I think he has 1 point. Like it's just not. He does not have playoff experience. So I'm genuinely just wondering what the Yzer plan is here. I don't believe that. Well, we're gonna have $12 million to spend next year, plus plus depending on what the cap goes up and guys that are coming off their books. I don't know that that's a plan anymore, because you're already paying Dylan Larkin $8 million. You're paying Lucas Raymond $8 million. Like there should be more to this. No.
Yeah, absolutely. And you saw a team like last year, like Nashville. They spent a lot of money. They got a lot of guys, and then they face planted at the beginning of the season. Like that, getting a lot of guys isn't going to guarantee you any wins.
And good players.
Yeah.
Steven Stamkos, Jonathan Marchessault, those are good hockey players. And it didn't matter. You can't just throw money at your problems. It's not going to work. That is a team that I'm constantly rooting for. I want the Red Wings to be better than they are. I think the league is better when the Red Wings are good. They're one of those core franchises that I'm just like,
Agree.
yeah,
Yeah,
I think, and we love our Locked On Red Wings guys. So really hopeful that they can they can get to celebrate some of the stuff we did last year. It's about time that they turn that leaf. All right, how did we do? How did we do on Detroit? Did we miss anything? Do you guys have a different read on the Red Wings entirely? Let us know. Put it down in the comments below this YouTube video, or send it to us on via email, lockedoncanadiens@gmail.com. That's how you can reach out to us with anything. Questions for our mailbag, which we record on Fridays. So get those in. Or we record on Thursdays for Fridays. So get those in as soon as you can. We'll do our best to get to all of your questions then. You can follow us, Locked On Canadiens, just about everywhere we are posting things. You can send us DMs there as well. We try to check those for mailbag questions, but obviously the email is probably the best bet to go with. You can follow me at Maybe It's Ian. You can follow Laura at The Actor Stick. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow.